Good day to you. My name is Tony Ballinger, and welcome to another episode in the Fighting Men of Rhodesia YouTube series. My guest today is Trooper Nick Roux from the SAS. Nick, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tony. Nice to meet you. After
Good.
chatting so long.
Yeah. We had a bit of a hassle getting your camera working and that type of thing, but I think Martin Kramer has the record at the moment for about an hour and 40 minutes trying to get things working. But so you're well in the green zone on this occasion. Nick, tell us a bit about yourself, where you were born, grew up, who your folks were, what school you went to, and how you ended up in the SAS.
Okay, so I was born in Guello, right in the Midlands, almost the middle part of Rhodesia in those days. And on a small holding out of town, that's where I grew up my first few years until kindergarten, which was just down the road. And then my parents sent me to a convent, which I was kicked out of when I reached standard 3. At that point, they sent me off to boarding school, so standard 4 and standard 5 in boarding school at Cecil John Rhodes, which, by the way, is a very fine school even now. I went and visited it last year, so I can give it a thumbs up. And it's still called Cecil John Rhodes.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was at boarding school there, and kind of was a late joiner. So all the guys knew each other, and there was someone new. They used to call me the White Rat, because I had very blonde hair in those days. And I don't know if you've ever experienced boarding school, you have to find your way in the pecking order very fast. There were some very strong farm type guys at that school that were very quick to use their fists. So there was a lot of argy-bargy and boxing that went on. Anyway, I found my niche there because I didn't have any fear of breaking the school rules. And I used to do quite a lot of bunking out of school, which was quite profitable because the guys would come up with the money and ask and put their orders in, and I could stroll into town, buy whatever for them, and come back. So, and I remember in standard 5, the main bully made it a rule that each person in the dormitory had to experience bunking out with me at least once, including himself. And it was quite amazing how scared these guys were. Even if they were big and strong, they were scared of being caught by the teachers, the housemasters and people in town or whatever. Anyway, I sort of learnt how to walk around unseen, basically.
Without realizing it, you were training yourself to be a sleuthful character right at an early age.
Yeah, I became very confident of being in the dark and stopping stock still and believing that I wasn't going to be seen, and I wasn't. Just by not moving. The biggest giveaway is movement. And if you just suddenly stop, people walk right past you without seeing you. And I learned that and was confident in that skill, if I can call it a skill, right from those days.
And then, because you were in a rural school, you must have had a lot of bush around you as well. Did you get out into that much?
Well, all the times that I wasn't in actual school and in the hostel, that was my playground, was on the doorstep of the bush. I mean, if I ran out of my parents' house, there was just endless miles of felt. It wasn't. Guello's quite flat, flat with vast open flays and maybe an odd anthill or something. So you could just head off running in whatever direction and not stop for the next 5 kilometers.
And frigging cold in winter, hey?
Very cold. There was a lot of frosty mornings. Very, very cold. Crunchy ice in the mornings.
I remember when I was at Osby's there, we were doing some training exercise, a coin thing. and the instructor threw one of those flash bombs at me because he'd seen me, and I had the MAG, and I was so cold, so incredibly cold that I physically could not move. That thing landed by the flash hider, and I just put my head down and prayed that I wouldn't get any shrapnel in my head. And the thing went off, and my ears were ringing for about 20 minutes after that. But terribly cold. You don't want to get caught there without decent clothing.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, so that was, I spent my entire high school at Chaplin High School, but not as a boarder. I was a day scholar. They divided the house up into boarder houses and day scholar houses. So it was a bit of a disappointment because the day scholars tended not to come in to do forced sport or anything. So the results were normally that the boarding houses would beat us in sports. But anyway, that was very good. I was there for my entire high school career until the end of A levels, and then I got the certified mail in the post box for my call up. I was allocated to intake 164, but I worked out that that would be too late for me to start varsity the next year, the following year. So I wrote to them and asked nicely if I could come early, which they did. I think they were waiting for me to turn 18, but I wanted to get to varsity in time. So they accepted me at the ripe old age of 17, which was a couple of weeks before my birthday. Yeah, well, between the end of school, I knew I was going into national service, so I tried to make it easy for myself by preparing, and I spent that entire school holidays as such after end of school by training myself. So I used to run a lot, carry bricks in each hand, and just to I knew it was going to be hard, and I just wanted to counteract that by being ahead of the game. So we all had to jump on the trains or whatever to make our way up to Salisbury. I think we ended up at Cranbourne Barracks for the intake, and then you were guided to whichever unit you thought you wanted to be in, like INTAF or RLI or School of Infantry or whatever. I did want to try for School of Infantry, but I started off going to the SAS bunch. The reason I wanted to do that was because it was kind of a family unit as such. I had two uncles in the SAS. My eldest uncle was Anthony Mullen, who's now passed away. He reached the age of 79 a couple of years ago. And then his younger brother followed him. Michael Mullen is one of the guys that was killed early on, I think in 1968. So anyway, I felt that was where I should go, just to keep the family tradition or whatever going. Funny, I don't know why I felt it fell onto me, because I've got lots of cousins, but none of them wanted to do that or attempted to do that, as far as I know. So anyway, there I was, and I went off there, and then I think too many people pitched up. Too many people were trying to get in, and they just took us all as a mob, like a bunch of sheep, and made us run up and down the rugby field. And they were just culling from the back. Everybody that was too slow just got culled out until they had about 120 to start that day. At which point, you were basically in the sausage machine. You had to do whatever was shouted at you. There were some really hardcore training instructors that we had. And then we went off, myself and one other guy that I know of. We attempted to go to School of Infantry, which meant another train trip all the way down to Bulawayo to Llewellyn Barracks. And then they put us through a whole lot of competency checks, puzzles, physical things, working out. You get in groups and you do these little tasks that probably didn't have an outcome, but just they wanted to see who was taking charge, etc., etc. Anyway, didn't make that part, so they dumped us on the train again and sent us all the way back to Salisbury. So my first couple of weeks was pretty much living on trains and being shouted at in different barracks.
Yeah.
And then we ended up also joining the rest of the guys late. And I must say that the training there was not very much spit and polish type of stuff. I mean, we had to be clean and tidy. But it just struck me that our barracks were quite rough and ready. They were quite dusty. The wind blew through. All we had to do is have a neat bed with all our kit laid out properly, polished boots, clean clothes, and especially all weapons clean. And that was about it. So they didn't really hammer in what you might think of as military, all the military hardships of
spit and polish, yeah.
Which I was grateful for, because I wasn't interested in that. But on the other hand, we ran from morning till night. The crack of dawn, before the crack of dawn, we were up, cold showers, PT, and then as soon as you're exhausted, into lectures, and you were not allowed to sleep in lectures. So that it was pretty hard. But the physical side was paramount. They really got us running. You were not allowed to walk anywhere during the day. They also had a chin-up bar just outside the mess, and you had to do a certain amount of chin-ups before every single meal. So you'd queue up, do all your chin-ups, and then join the queue for the food. It was just continuous physical exercise, which was good. I mean, that was what we were probably there for. That's what I was expecting and what we got.
And was the food plentiful and reasonable quality?
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of good food. I mean, obviously, the story about the tea and the jungle juice, which they used to lace with bluestone.
Yeah,
trying to keep us down. But
I've often wondered if that was real or it was just a soldier's myth.
No, I'm telling you that if you got down to the bottom of the barrel of the jungle juice, you would have those crystals in your mug. So I'm convinced there was some of that going on.
Yeah, very strong flavor of what was it, copper sulfate or something. But I think all of us were just too buggered to even think of getting sexually aroused in the army. I don't think I thought of a girl for the whole period.
No, yeah, we were pretty exhausted most days. Yeah,
Mm.
but the food was good. Lots of protein, lots of good vegetables. I never ever complained about the food. I mean, I don't know where but they seem to have an endless supply of steaks.
Yes, and
good English breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
So, and later on in the year, wherever we were, we had a traveling kitchen at our closest base, and they used to put on really good meals in the middle of nowhere.
And at least you didn't have to eat a baboon with maggots coming out of it like the Scouts. I
We never
ever taught that on the bush survival.
No, we were in a different role completely. We went, whenever we went into the bush, we took just enough for us for those days, and generally those days were quite quick in and out. We didn't. There was the one time right at the end of the war, I did spend some time out in the bush with the Renamo, but then they took over the catering for us. So we didn't have to live on our rat packs.
So your training was pretty strenuous. Where did you actually train, in the Matopos or up at Inyanga?
No. All our training, our first 6 weeks was at Kabrit, which is right next to New Sarum, next to Salisbury Airport, right next door. Our boundary was their fence of the airport, so we were underneath the aircraft that were taking off on the runway. That's we did 6 weeks there. That was all our basics. And then at the end of that, they loaded us up on a train with all our vehicles, all our food, everything that we needed for the next 6 weeks. And that was a train trip all the way across country to Guai River mine. There's a mine there, which was shut down. It had all the old mine houses and that we commandeered and lived in for the next 6 weeks.
It was
But that
actually
was nice.
a lovely place, that Guai River mine. It had good accommodation, good buildings. I was based there for maybe 2-3 weeks, retraining a group of guys before we went up to Wankie. But I enjoyed it there. But not a nice area to train in, quite hilly, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was quite rocky and quite hilly. So, and there were some quite mean gomos that we had to run down. You know, there was there was plenty of that going on. But I remember leaving Salisbury train station, and we thought we were on holiday. We were all our stuff packed onto this train. We had the whole day off. It was going to take a day and probably more than 24 hours to go by train. So we were really relaxing. Nobody was shouting at us any longer. Sitting out in open carriages, sunning ourselves. It was really nice. And then it started raining.
Yeah.
And we were, as I said, in open trucks. There were no carriages. We were out with the trucks and the rain was coming down. And the next day or 24 hours or whatever, we were basically trying to sleep in 3 inches of water. We arrived a bit bedraggled and like drowned rats on the other side.
The amazing thing is, Nick, I don't ever remember getting a cold. Doesn't matter whether we slept in water or wet sleeping bags or wet shirts or drove on the back of a truck with sopping wet shirts and combat jackets on. I don't ever remember getting a cold. It was amazing.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, I don't remember that either. I do remember after 2 days of having wet clothes and wet boots on, that it seeped all the way in. That my feet, when I eventually took those boots off, were on their way to going rotten, just white. And
your skin looks like a Mapai worm, and yeah, it's terrible when that gets like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did the second phase of training differ from your first phase? Obviously, first phase was learning how to hold a rifle and fire a rifle and that type of stuff. What did this phase consist of?
Well, the first phase, that was it. I mean, we had to learn about a number of weapons, and it was probably once or twice a week we'd run down to the range and do target shooting and try and avoid getting the cowbell for the worst shot. That was also quite a challenge to have a bell around your neck for the next week. And the second phase, it was just reinforcing all of that, but a lot of bush training, and I mean, you learn to have that rifle as an extension of you. You could never have it outside of reach. It was always there. And if you were caught without it, that was you being punished for the next 3 hours. So you just got used to that. I mean, I think in fact modern day kids have that same feeling when they lose their cell phone.
Yes.
And it's not within reach.
Yes.
And it was an extension of us by the end of that 6 weeks. If it wasn't more than 10 centimeters out of your reach, you started getting worried.
Yeah, this is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun. And that thing became your lover, your companion all the way through, didn't it?
Yeah. And then, of course, they went through all the training of camouflage, which was also quite an education on how you are not seen even 5 meters away. And going back to that whole thing about not moving, as soon as you move one finger, your whole body comes into view. As long as you lie there still, you won't be seen. And we did a lot of jungle lane stuff, setting up ambushes, how it's done. We did a lot of training on bigger types of weapons. And obviously, we had to become quite comfortable using AKs and RPDs instead of the FN.
And tracking?
Tracking wasn't part of our agenda, really. There were two sets of guys that were sort of they were diverted into two areas of expertise, and one of them was signals, and the other one was being a medic. They always wanted at least one medic in the stick and one signaler out of 4 people. So they split us according to who seemed to have the aptitude for what. I mean, we all knew the basic stuff. We did do training of how to set up a drip and how to look after someone, what to do, if they can't breathe, puncturing their into the neck and all the rest, all the really immediate first aid stuff that you can do. But the medics went on to learn a bit more, and they did a lot of training actually in Harare Hospital, on weekends, on real live patients that came in from the beer halls or wherever, drunken fights. They would come in all chopped up and stabbed and whatever, and they would actually get hands-on training with them.
Some people might be thinking, why are you saying Harare when it was Salisbury? But in fact, there was a township within Salisbury that was called Harare, and had a hospital of their own. Harare Hospital was for our African brothers, and like you said, on a weekend, they hacked each other to pieces with knives and bottles, and a good place to train to be a medic.
Yeah, you've got to see big wounds close up and stitch them up together. Anyway, I knew about all of that, but as I say, my part was quite basic, and I went into the signals part of it. So I had to learn all about the radios and setting up the antenna and Morse code and how the coding worked, the daily code that shifted around. So that
was that the same? Was that the same coding that we used in general infantry? The shackle system, shackle on, shackle off, or did you have a completely different?
Yeah, that's right.
Same map.
Oh, look, I'm sure they were changed at regular intervals, and probably for whichever op we were on, it was specific for those days that we were out. But, I don't actually know if the entire army had the same one for that day, and I suspect they didn't.
I read or heard somewhere from someone of repute that the Brits were listening to everything we did through the whole war. Apparently, they used to crack our code within about 4 hours, and so we were giving stuff in code, and they knew exactly what was going on.
But I mean, in 4 hours, a lot can happen in 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
So if they were 4 hours behind, we probably weren't there anymore.
Yeah, true. So how did you went into another phase after that, didn't you? We'll move on a bit from the training, otherwise it'll take up too much of the story here. You had one final phase after that, did you? And then you were badged.
Well, from at the end of the Queen counterinsurgency and Uruguay, we did a pre-rev and then straight to selection, which was pretty much a week of the hardest part. They had started starving us just before that, so we were really hungry and thirsty. And they chucked us off the back of the truck in the middle of Metopus, and they gave us 2 numbers of coordinates. This is where you are. This is where you will be tomorrow at such and such a time. You probably know the Metopus quite well, but there's no going in straight lines there because of the granite hills that block your way at every move.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did the selection, and immediately after that, the guys we didn't get badges. We weren't badged after that. We had to still do static line training. If you were lucky and looked like you were going to stick around, they would carry on and give you free fall training. But the big bulk of us just did static line. And then after that, we were still sent into the bush with some of the older guys, the more experienced guys, just to break us in and iron out any last little niggly things. So that was still a few weeks. So I'd say maybe even a month later, they started choosing the guys that would wear the colors.
Did you do your static training in Salisbury or in Potchefstroom?
No, that was New Sarum, out of the Dakotas. They had a jump school there, right at Salisbury Airport. I mean, it was next door.
I ask every guy that's been a paratrooper, what was your feeling from your first jump? Did you crap in your pants, or did you just
No, look, I mean, I was never very scared of heights, climbing and jumping off things, and so and we had a lot of preparation, days and days and days of jumping off higher and higher things. And I don't know if you've seen those mock-up parachutes on this, where they got the rest of the guys to swing you in a big arc over the hangar floor, and then just at random they would let go of the rope, and you'd come down at any part of your swing. So you had to be kind of ready to hit the ground and roll, and that rolling. Well, I think it's kept me in without a broken bone all my life. Just knowing how to fall and not, to roll out of it.
Apparently it bleeds. It bleeds the energy of the mass of your body away from any critical parts of your body. It just like if you landed with your legs straight. I mean, I'm not a parachutist or a paratrooper, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if your legs were straight, for example, you would do some serious damage to your body.
Yeah. Well, they would drum this into you. I mean, I can still recall it quite clearly. I mean, toes up, knees slightly bent, elbows in, punch down, chin on the chest, and then when you hit the ground, you just rolled out of it over and over again. So I don't think many guys actually injured themselves on landing. When you think about it, I mean, I do remember one guy that landed in a tree and his feet caught and flipped him, so he fell on his head and had a bit of a crack on his neck. But generally, I think the guys got off quite lightly after all the training. Just give the guys credit. They trained us and made sure there was no getting out of it. You couldn't half do the training. You had to do it the whole way. And then so as I said, the first op and the last that I did inside the country was overlooking Birchenough Bridge. We could see it from the Gomo that we were on. We had to basically get in there undetected, sit on this Gomo and observe and take notes of everything that we were seeing. There were I'm sure there was quite a lot of action in there, and there were a lot of Majibas running around with cattle. And of course, it wasn't too long before one of them came up to see what was happening on the top of our hill. And of course, the older guys took great delight in telling us how to get rid of this little Majiba, and it had to be quiet, which was all bullshit, actually. So we had to steel yourself. Okay, we're going to catch this guy, and then we're going to have to disappear him, which we didn't do. We didn't do, but they wanted to get our reaction.
Yeah. So take us to your very first actual operation, Nick. What happened?
Look, we were doing a lot of external things. The rest of my year was doing external stuff into Zambia and Mozambique. There was one they were looking for people, but it fizzled out. There was a plane that went down in Botswana, and they wanted guys to go and look for the survivors. And everyone was standing by to do that, but it didn't get off the ground. I don't know if you remember any incident like that in 1979.
I don't, to be honest, no.
Civilian. Anyway, that was the kind of thing we would do. The one was really was just to pop into Zambia and get some truck drivers just for intel. So we just had to pop in there, blockade a road, cause a lot of alarm and despondency and take a couple of guys back with us. Always wondered who the unlucky volunteers were, but they had to leave their truck and come home with us.
So when you say pop in there, were you deployed by helicopter, or how did it work?
Yeah, normally we would go in by helicopter. If it was a bit further, what they would do is send us in by Dakota, drop us in, and then we'd walk the last 10 Ks or whatever, do whatever the job was, and then go to a prearranged pickup point.
Mm.
So,
and were the American Huey helicopters, which we called the Bells, were they in operation at that point in time? I think they arrived around about 78, didn't they?
Yeah, we did go in the Bells. We also, the Alouettes were still there, but those were mostly used for basically for training. We did a bit of training in those Alouettes, but I think from then onwards we were going out in the Bells.
I listened to one of the guys talk. I think I interviewed him. I can't remember. He said the difference between the Alouette and the Bell was dramatic. I mean, the power of the lift of the Bell, how quickly it could rise, move forward. Obviously, the weight that it carried. Did you find it quite liberating and exciting to go into that type of chopper?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and there was no such thing as a seatbelt either. You just hung on to what you could hang on to.
Mm.
And if you decided to fall over the edge, that was you, gone. So, and then right at the end, towards the end of the war, we actually had some South African Pumas that joined us and took us to places, which was quite nice as well, because they could take a whole bunch more people. I think about 8 or 10 in there.
Yeah, I think if my figures are right, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think the Bell could carry 8, I think, and the Puma could carry 15, but I'm prepared to be corrected.
So anyway, when we got the Pumas, you know, you're going on to something quite big, because they wanted to get us there in numbers quite quickly. And these that we always used to fly just above the trees, just tree hopping. So whoever was lurking on the ground would have very little chance to turn around and aim at you.
The only thing with the Bells, no, they had a very loud whoop 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 noise, which could be heard for miles. I'm surprised they weren't hit more frequently, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. And when it was time for our pickup, and you could hear them coming from miles away, it was a very comforting feeling that we were about to go home.
So, which of the bigger ops were you on? Nick, did you go on Dingo or any of the others? Which was one that really struck you as a major operation?
Well, that whole story about Rhodesia and Mapai, that was probably the biggest, and I think there was some quite heavy losses there. The rest were, as I say, were very quick in and outs. We did a couple of bridges in Zambia. They decided to take out some bridges there.
I don't want to skim over the detail too much. You know, it's very interesting to the audience to get more bit nitty gritty. On the Barragem raid, can you tell us about the planning? I mean, that was quite a big raid. It was Mapai was also involved with Barragem at the same time, I think.
That was a couple of days later.
Couple of days later. So did you go into like a warehouse or something at New Serum and look at sand models? How did the planning go for the Mapai raid?
Yeah, that was normal. That was the normal thing. We would all have a pre-brief of what's going on. The thing about Barragem was that it never went to plan, because we were going to go in there and take out that bridge on day one. For some reason, I think it might have been weather or something else, but they ended up dumping us in the middle of a great big flat salt pan with a little island in the middle. I mean, it was just a dirt pan. There was no real water in it. And so we basically made ourselves scarce inside the middle of this island with the flat pan all the way around us. And we stayed there for, I think it was 2 or 3 days, before all the choppers came back and then lifted us to the actual bridge.
Was D Squadron with you on that raid? Weren't they involved in some part of the blowing up Rhodesia? That's the South African guys.
Yeah.
D Squadron.
They pretty much they were, but you know, we were very insular then. We divided into our troops. You know, they had A, B, and C. Rhodesian troop D, and the D troop. We hardly ever even saw them, and maybe we would have bump into them one day in a camp and compare weapons and that kind of thing. And they were kitted up differently to us. They had their own stuff, lighter, and I think what was it? Anyway, South African branded stuff with lighter ammunition, which we were quite jealous of.
And the boots were different, and they had folding butt FNs, didn't they?
Yeah, so they had good stuff, and we kind of coveted what they had. But anyway, by that time I carried an RPD, so wherever we went, I was never out of ammunition because it was the same stuff that the other guys were carrying on the other side. So
did you use the same magazine that the Russians designed for the RPD, or did you develop your own bag? I've spoken to other special force guys. They used a kidney bag or something for the ammo. Did you do that?
We had a soft bag, so we basically folded the belt into a soft canvas bag. I think it originally came out with a kind of a drum, but that was chucked away as just being too much weight and too much hassle if something went wrong. So those were just I never ever went anywhere with one of those drums. We just used to zigzag the belt into a soft canvas bag.
Yeah. And what was your role at Rhodesia, Nick? Were you part of a stop group, or were you guarding the guys that lay the charges?
No, I was on the one hill overlooking the whole thing, and I must tell you how much respect I've got for the hunter pilots that were on that job as well, because they came in and softened that thing up. So by the time we got there, the guys were still cowering. We just basically overran them without the only shots that were being fired were by us, because they were all inside their foxholes trying to avoid the next hunter strike. Because you know what, that hunter, that noise, and you're not entirely sure where it is. It's like got that roar, and then it suddenly takes a dive. And I remember reaching the top of that hill and jumping into a foxhole, and I saw just outside a direct hit by a hunter. I think they used to carry 20 mil on their wing.
They had 30 mil.
Well, that made a size of a football hole in one chap that was lying just outside the foxhole.
Good Lord.
Now, I was quite impressed by that, but and I was kind of trying to figure out what to do next because there was no resistance. And then I saw inside the same foxhole as me was another guy, and he was just trying to bury his head in the sand. And basically, that was the end of him because, you know, he should have expected someone to go over the top, and I didn't expect to see him there. Anyway, I've got in my house somewhere. I ejected the round that was in his chamber, and I've kept it as a talisman. I'm very, very grateful for the way that those hunters softened everyone up, because if they hadn't, I don't think I wouldn't be here to chat to you.
So if I get this right, the bridge, it wasn't really a bridge, was it? It was almost like a dam wall. Is that right?
I don't think it dammed up any water. I didn't actually walk on that bridge at any point in my life, because no sooner that I saw it that it went bang. I was sitting at the top of a hill, and there was still stuff happening. And I must just tell you about the hunters going overhead and shooting. The first sound that you hear is the round, the breaking the sound barrier of the round going over your head. And then you look at the aircraft, and you can see the puffs of smoke coming from it, and then the report. And then you look over there and you can see all the strikes, and then that noise comes back to you. So it's all this, it was like a kaleidoscope of stuff happening. So, and they were hitting targets on the other side where there was a bit more resistance. Our side of the hill of the river just folded. It folded completely within minutes. I still remember somebody else that was running up behind me was shouting at me, get out of there, get out of there. I said, well, what's the problem? I said, no, we're going to throw in grenades. I said, well, there's nothing to throw them at. It's all done. It's finished. And yeah, so that we sat on the top of that hill, being unmolested. There were a few running figures quite far away that we kind of helped them on their way. You never know if you actually hit anyone at that range or not.
So I'll take it the trenches and the foxholes and whatever that you were hitting were put there by Frelimo to protect the bridge. Did they have?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they have any sort of anti-aircraft weapon, 23 mil quads or anything like that?
Yeah, there was a anti-aircraft gun in that foxhole, the one that I went into. And before we left, we put a white phos in the breach and melted the whole thing down to scrap. So that.
What a pity. But I guess you could uplift everything you found, hey?
No, it was far too big to carry around. But I do remember very clearly as well, sitting there when everything went quiet on our side. I must tell you about this, but this mother duck came out of nowhere, and all the little ducklings were following her, as if, none of this is my business.
Oh.
You guys will leave me alone, I'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
And we were just actually, I was thinking, people are actually quite ridiculous the way they go around making noises and killing each other.
Nature's so beautiful, isn't it? What a wonderful scene. You could almost make a painting out of that, ducks walking past guys killing each other. So for our foreign viewers, the Barisham Bridge was fairly close to the capital of Mozambique, called Maputo. When I say close, I don't know, maybe 100 km inland. And it was part of the railway network that Frelimo used to get not only their own troops up to the Rhodesian border in support of Zanla, but I guess they transported Zanla up there as well, took all their goods. So it was just a way to degrade their ability to get troops up to the front line. And I've spoken to a hunter pilot, Sigmiller, how he was a hunter pilot, and how they used to plow into these long train convoys and smash them up. And much to his embarrassment, he went in one day shooting up this long column, having a glorious time firing 30 mil rounds, which were like $100 each back then. And his wingman said, hey, that's the convoy that we blew up yesterday. So, but anyway, wonderful planes, those hunters. And how did you get out of it? Did you actually see the helicopter that was shot down at Barisham?
No, that was on the other side of the river.
Right.
I didn't. We all grouped together afterwards and were chopped out of there and went back to the pan for a bit of a get together and refill our magazines and belts and whatever. And
did Frelimo attempt to counterattack at any point in that mission?
Well, during the time that we were in the middle of that flay, that pan, a bunch of them came. I think there were 8 of them, 8 or so. But anyway, they were just looking around. I think they'd heard noises and they wanted to come and have a look, and they just sort of sauntered up, totally relaxed. I think the one guy had a boombox over his ear, and they were all listening to the music. And the guys on that side just waited for them to get within range, and then opened up, and I think that they all fell down in the first burst, but except for one who ran away very, very fast. So that wasn't a counter-attack. It was just a sort of a curiosity expedition which went wrong.
And the question everybody will have on their minds is, was the boombox still working?
I've no idea. I don't know. It probably wasn't. It was probably riddled, because I think on that side, it wasn't actually on my side of the island, and we were just told, "Hey, these guys are coming. These guys are coming." And we just said for about 20-second bursts of firing, and then it was all quiet again.
What was your ratio of RPDs to AKs? Did you have mainly RPDs, all you guys?
No, a lot of the guys still had FNs. Some guys chose AK itself, but nobody ever carried MAGs when I was with them. I never saw anyone apart from pictures of RAR guys and RLI, but we didn't carry MAGs.
Yeah. Nothing like the sound of that weapon, though, and it can penetrate a lot better.
It's got a lot of punch. And the FN's also got the range, but you've got to weigh that up about what you're carrying, all the weight you're carrying. So, but a lot of guys did, and some of the more experienced guys, older guys, had acquired for themselves a folding but FN. We were actually really pretty much free to choose what we wanted to carry. Obviously, the more firepower you've got, the better. So if you're going to be carrying all that ammunition, you may as well take more instead of lots of FN rounds. You take more AK rounds.
Yeah. And where were you when Mapai was taking place? Were you still in Rhodesia or waiting in a holding area to go to Barisham?
I think we left and we came back through Grand Reef. Unless I can't really remember. We might have left directly out of Ferrari, but we came in on Pumas, lots of us. And in fact, I think on the way out, there was all sorts of guys on the ground shooting up at us, and one of in fact, the pilot in my chopper got hit in the head, not in the helmet. And it made he dived, the whole thing lurched and we went down. And then the co-pilot caught it and righted it, and off we went again. But I think that had quite a whack on his head, but he was alive. It didn't penetrate right through to his skull. It was just a kind of a glancing blow. But I mean, that's how quick something like that could turn wrong.
Was that a South African pilot?
Yeah. Again, we didn't really socialize with the pilots. I mean, we kind of laughed at them, the blue jobs, because they always come in and they've got all the cool drinks and the chocolate biscuits and all the rest. And we were living in the bush on our rat packs. The only real contact we had with them was getting on and off their chopper and going on it, and then waving them goodbye. that was it. And by then, stuff was really happening. So it wasn't an opportunity to have a social conversation.
Our nickname for the South Africans, that they were slopies. So maybe that's why the bullet didn't penetrate. It sloped off his head. Just a bit of sick humor there. Tell us about another operation you went on. You mentioned some bridges up in Zambia. What was the point of dropping those bridges? To stop exports to Tanzania?
Just general disruption. That was very deep into Zambia, and we parachuted in then. It was one of my op jumps, both of my op jumps in that year, I landed in trees.
Yeah.
So very big, tall trees. And I was kind of wondering how I was going to get out of this, because I was hanging up several meters up in the tree. And then the branch broke, and it all came down on top of me. So I ended up on the ground anyway. anyway, from there we walked in. We used to just pack up our chutes. I don't even know if they were ever recovered. We used to just pack them up and hide them, chuck some sand and sticks over, and then off we walked. Found the bridge. Um, I was not a demolition guy. I was the signaler. So my job was to basically send any messages if we were in the Dwang. So the actual explosives guys went out, put all the stuff on, and we come back and kind of made a cordon, made sure no one was coming. And then they came jogging back to us and said, okay, take cover, it's going to go now. And it went off. I think they overcated somewhat because we were, that was one of the scariest times I've had, because there were huge blocks of concrete landing beyond us, over our heads, and thudding down all over the place. And the tree that I was behind really, really didn't feel strong enough to take one of those concrete blocks. I was really trying to make myself very small behind that tree. So,
do you remember the name of the river that bridge crossed, and how many spans was the bridge?
I don't remember that part. I'll have to look it up. I think no, I'm not sure. I know it was very deep in, and we had to walk a very long way to catch up with the choppers on the way out. I remember walking in and finding a village in Zambia and sitting there, and we had to basically stop everyone, calm them down. We weren't after the people. We weren't there for that. So I remember telling a mother to keep her child quiet because he was starting to scream, and my other colleagues, like corporals and sergeants, saying, "Tell him to shut up, quiet, quiet," and then you tap your rifle, click, 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 and then she started screaming.
Oh no!
And of course, the only way I could actually shut them up was to take a Royal Sweet out of my pocket and say, "Yeah, give this to her, give it." So it's called a Royal Sweet, and that kept him quiet for a bit. And then we just quietly got up and walked away again.
I remember reading up one book or some interview that was done earlier. One group of SAS guys coming back from one of those bridges was really heavily pursued by the Zambian army. Was that one of the raids that you were on?
Yeah, there might have been several done on that same day. I think that they would tend to start banging them off all over the place. We weren't chased at all. Yeah, we were never.
I'm trying to think of that SAS guy. We've interviewed him. Anyway, I think it was in his talk how they were pursued by the Zambian army for days and days and days, and the other guys commented on how brilliant he was at evading them. He seemed to know what they were doing, could read their minds. But in a situation like that, that's where your physical fitness comes into play.
100%, yeah. I mean, we could just run and run and run all day. I mean, when I came out and started running marathons, it was I could do it without even any particular training. So yeah.
And you did another raid. I think earlier on you said bridges, which is plural. Did you do another one?
Well, no, that was the one in Zambia. We were sent in to act as a stop group once. I don't think that one actually took off because we never had anyone running towards us. I think what happened is they all left during the night, and I don't know if the Air Force had been in there and killed a few, but they missed us. We missed them, and we kind of walked around. And I do remember smelling dead bodies, which is quite a horrible smell in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But we never actually bumped into anyone.
Mm.
And that was actually a combined stop group that we were with the RLI. And I do remember they were very pissed off with us because we wanted to move. We wanted to cover some ground, and they had to sort of try and catch up. We wanted to catch our transport out, and they were kind of holding us back because I think the RLI were fantastic in the role that they were, the fire force role. But they weren't happy about having to cover ground by foot.
Mm.
It got to the point where I actually had to give away all my water, which was so I was getting quite annoyed as well, just to keep them going. I don't know if they remember.
Yeah, there was a comment about them in that other SAS guy who described the Mapai raid in great detail. That obviously their roles were quick attack and multiple choppers, multiple fire forces, multiple delivery by Dakota every day, and I think because of that they never did really develop that really long distance fitness that would have been required of the SAS, and I'm certainly not any person to comment fully on that, but that appears to be the case.
Yeah, look, I mean, we each had our things to do, and they did theirs very well, and I didn't want to be the person doing that. I was quite happy doing what I was doing.
Yeah, I certainly couldn't have done what the RLR guys did, contact after contact. So you got to have a lot of mental stamina for that. And so, did you do anything else of note that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I can tell you a bit about Mapai because it was a few days after Barajam. We went back and we sort of regrouped in the island, and then we went back again to the outskirts of Mapai, which was quite a dry approach. Not much grass. The only thing of note there, and I think it's come up in one of your conversations before, they had a lookout in a tree. And he didn't last very long because it was, there was no time for him to get down before he was shot down. I think I was on the extreme left of the approach, and we made it right up to the first trenches, which were quite fast, zigzagging all the way both directions. And then we were asked to stop there. I think the powers that be decided it was going to be too much of a direct assault, and then they made us stand by and wait. They sent in some cameras to soften them up with those big golf bombs. And then I think with the losses from the day before or the 2 days before, with that chopper going down, somebody said, no, okay, we're gonna leave this one, and we'll walk back again without much happening. It was kind of an anticlimax.
Yeah, there were trenches everywhere, a vast number of anti-aircraft guns with bits all over the place. Even gave the hunters a hard time when they came in. I think you guys, I'm trying to remember who gave us the talk on that attack at Mapai. He's in one of our episodes. You guys actually got into the initial trenches and were moving forward, and you found out that they were popping up all over the place. They must have
it was a mess.
Tunnels.
It was. As I said, the trenches were zigzagging in all directions. They probably had quite a lot of advice on how to set that all up. It's not like a trench you could get into and shoot down the trench, because we were just going to hit earth walls after 10 meters.
Some people have the impression that special force operators are like supermen, But I want to ask you, what level of fear did you feel going into that type of operation? I've heard guys puking in the doorway of Dakotas and stuff from fear looking down. But what sort of level of fear did you have in that, Nick?
I don't remember being. I was always excited. I mean, it was very intense. It was very intensive the whole time. So it's hard to say at any one point that I was scared. I was very worried about those concrete blocks falling around. That was like a real thing happening.
Yeah.
I could see these blocks thudding into the ground all around me. Even going in over the top of that foxhole where that guy was supposed to be waiting for me, it was so quick. In my at the time, it probably felt like minutes, but it probably was literally seconds that it happened.
Mm.
And I was still admiring what the hunters had done to the other chap. Uh, and there I was rooming up with one of the enemy. And it all really, I was confident in our training. Our training was top notch. I mean, I must tell you that one of our first inspections when I was a rookie, Barrett came in to inspect us, and he stopped in front of me and he asked how old I was, and I hadn't turned 18 yet, so I told him, 17. So, and I'm pretty sure that he told the story in the mess that night. Get rid of these children. We don't want these children in our army, because I was with real hard guys, and I was really just a handlanger, if you want to call it that. I was just someone to carry around a little bit extra firepower and use the Morse code machines and that kind of thing. But I can't respect those guys more. As far as fear, I think I was maybe possibly even too young to have grasped it all.
Yes. You're sort of insulated by that. When you're young, nothing bothers you, but when you're 35, don't ask me to do the same thing, sort of.
So you remember that story about the grenades? I mean, okay, there's me. If you look at the American movies about these guys that rip a pin out with their teeth and then lob it,
love it.
it doesn't work like that, because those pins are in and they folded back.
Well, I think what would happen is that your false teeth would come out stuck on the pin.
Absolutely. But so just as you get onto the ground, you straighten them up, because when we were going to attack those anti-aircraft sites at the top of Rhodesian. I straightened out these pins and then never got around to using that grenade. And the other guys wanted to throw theirs, and I was telling them, don't bother, there's nothing in here. Anyway, quite I forgot about that. I should have bent them back again. But one thing leading to the next. I was walking around back at the pan, on the island on the pan, and one of my colleagues came and spotted on my hip this grenade with a pin barely hanging in there. So it was embarrassing. I'm going to admit that right now. Quickly shoved it all the way back in and bent it straight around so it couldn't come out. But it's only afterwards that you think, I wasn't scared about that. I was more embarrassed. But then you think about what could have happened, and it could have been me and all the guys around me as well. So it was very slack mistake to have made.
I think
that kind of thing. So
I think our foreign viewers would like to read up more on that battle at Mapai. It was quite a big attack. I think it used all 8 of the Bell helicopters that we had, the Hueys, plus 15 of the South African ones. That was 23. And then I think the choppers that ferried men to refueling and holding areas, that numbered, I can be corrected, I think that numbered 50. So that was 73 helicopters, plus all the Dakotas and hunters and everything. to support that operation. It was quite a major thing. I often wonder, the American guys that were in the units who'd fought in Vietnam, suddenly being lifted up in a Huey to be taken into battle. It must have been quite a feeling for them.
Mm. Yeah, there were quite a few mercenary type guys in our unit, very experienced guys. I remember we always used to do retraining, and I'll call him Rick. Was very aggressive with his jungle training, jungle laying. I remember going through, and you had to try and shoot the targets that popped up, and he missed one. You know, and he was right next to it, but he hadn't seen it yet. And he just laid into it with a bayonet and ripped the thing up completely. Yeah. But and for those younger guys, say, well, yeah, I mean, he was in the moment. He wanted to kill that thing, even though it was a dummy. For those young guys, say, well, yeah, that's what you do. Eh? If you've gone past the target and you've missed it, that's the next thing to do, is just lay into it.
And the language that the Americans used as well was, some of it was strange, like light them up, or all sort of Vietnam sort of stuff.
Yeah, but they were rough and tough. I think he told me something about leaving home at 15 to join the army. I mean, that's all he'd ever known.
Jeez.
And he must have been pretty good at it by then, because he was well into his 40s, I reckon.
Yeah. And I think we're getting to the point where we might have to end this interview because of the time. Do you have any other encounters that you would like to tell us about, Nick?
It was just right at the end when we were supposed to be winding down, and the UN or the British troops or whoever came in to take over as such. They didn't have a clue where we were, what we were doing. The last stop that I was on was right over December, January, including Christmas and New Year. Right in the middle of Mozambique, training at Renamo.
Oh.
And I don't think the British Army would have been very impressed with the way we were moving around them at will. It was quite a thing living with these guys, because there were, I think, 8 of us in a camp of several. Anyway, it was at least 1,000, if not more, Renamo at the top of the mountain. And we went in there to train them how to use mortars and a bit of first aid and medical stuff, and drilling, and how to shoot accurately, etc., etc. And then we went on a few walks with them around the local area, just pretty much making their presence felt.
So for our foreign viewers, that Renamo group was the internal resistance to Michel in Mozambique. They were forming a counter-revolutionary army with the help of the Rhodesians. And how long did you spend with them up there? Was it Gorongosa, was it?
Yeah, it was Gorongosa. It was several weeks. As I said, it was right through December into January. I came to the end of my year on the 11th of January, so it was pretty much come out of there and my kit back and leave. And that was about the end of it. So
you mentioned the British monitoring force. Did you actually interact with them? I didn't quite understand what you were saying there.
Yeah, they'd already arrived to kind of oversee the handover and start to organize elections when 1980. And I do remember, I mean, I didn't have a car, I didn't own a car in those days. So I was quite happy with walking out the barracks, putting my thumb out and getting a lift. And that's how I traveled backwards and forwards across the whole country. There were enough people to offer you a lift on any day. And on that, I remember a British captain stopped, and I looked inside. I saw his rank, and I saw he wasn't one of our guys. And I just took the lift and didn't say anything to him. And at the end, I said, "Thank you, sir," and I walked off. It's like, I mean, it was just this feeling. You you don't belong here. You don't know what you're here for.
Yeah.
I don't know what he thought, because I was really quite surly towards him.
Were you in uniform?
I was in full uniform, yeah, with, with a beret and belt, and I don't know what he wasn't going to ask me anything, and I wasn't going to tell him anything.
No, no. It's a very sad day in our history because we all grew up waving British flags and the Union Jack. And when the Queen came over in 53, we were all yah ha ha. And we used to put cotton wool on our Christmas trees, and we were all English, feeling we were English descent anyway. And then we got this huge, massive spear thrown in our back. So there was a very bitter feeling amongst a lot of Rhodesians towards the Brits, but not all of them. I'm not going to lump them all in there. When I came over to England 22 years ago, I couldn't believe how angry a lot of the people were that I met about what happened to us in Rhodesia. But unfortunately, the Marxists were in control at the time. What's that idiot? I forget the one who smoked the pipe, Wilson. And
Wilson.
yeah, but even then, it was a question of economics. They could have supported us when Moserea was running the place, but in the end, Thatcher was told, if you don't throw Rhodesia under the bus, we're going to take your oil away, because British oil was all through Nigeria, and that's why she caved. But yeah, it was a tragedy. But anyway, Nick, unless you got anything else to say, I think we're going to end it here.
The last thing was there was no debrief or anything.
Yeah.
I came to the end of the year, handed my stuff back, and walked away, and that was the last of it. There was no. I think everyone there had other things on their mind. The whole changing political situation and whether to actually go along and accept Mugabe or not, or the result. And anyway, it was just pretty much a walk away.
I don't even remember handing my weapon or my uniform in. I've just got no recollection of that. And yet the ironical thing is that when Intimbani in Bulawayo started up at the end of November 1980, there were RAR guys and territorials fighting for Mugabe to beat up Joshua Nkomo, which is just, I can't get my head around that.
Mugabe was a master manipulator.
Many people have said, why didn't we join forces with Nkomo? We might have had a more moderate leader in him. But I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess.
Well, I suppose a lot of people would have hated Nkomo to bits because of those planes that were shot down.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I think generally a Matabele person might have been easier to deal with, whether it was him or some deputy. I don't know. But anyway, we can surmise as much as we like, but it's not there anymore. I'd like to thank you for coming to talk to me today, and I hope this encourages other guys to come forward and tell their story. We do, as I've said in every interview, we do struggle a bit to get people to talk. I'm very interested in getting older farmers. If you're listening today and you were a farmer, please come forward because you guys experienced amazing things. And we'll leave it at that. As I talk, John Fonsale, who owns this channel, is in Manila. He has to go to South Africa to renew his passport. They couldn't get it done in Manila because the South African embassy there gave him bad advice, and then it was too late. So keep him in mind. Well, by the time this talk comes out, it would have been a done deal already. But think of him retrospectively, I guess. Anyway, Nick, thank you very much for coming to chat to us. It was great, and I wish you all the best there in South Africa. Now, are you still working up on a ship somewhere in Angola, aren't you?
I'm freelance working offshore. So,
and what do you do?
I'm a surveyor, hydrographic surveyor, which wasn't kind of on the list of things to do when I left school because we didn't have any sea. So,
wow!
I don't know how I ended up doing that by mistake, and I've never really settle down on land.
Are
I
you
mean,
are you married?
divorced.
Divorced. Okay. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. But it
Well, it
happens.
lasted a good 30 years. It was a good 30 years.
Anyway, thanks again, and all the very best for your future, my friend.
Okay.
Thanks,
I'll
thanks,
chat to
Nick.
you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.